Welcome to Based on True. If you enjoy real stories told with honesty and quiet intensity, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It truly helps the channel grow. In this story, you will hear about a man who thought his marriage was stable, if not perfect, until one quiet afternoon revealed a truth that shattered everything he believed about love, loyalty, and himself. What began as a silent betrayal turned into a journey of self-discovery, quiet strength, and a transformation no one expected, not even him.
I was not supposed to hear the sentence. That ended everything. I was not even in the room. I was crouched under the kitchen sink trying to fix a leak. Water had been dripping all morning. Had the wrench in one hand and my flashlight in the other. That was when I heard her voice through the vent above me. Soft, low, serious. The kind of tone people use when they think you have already left the house. He is just not the man I thought he would be. Pause. I am done. Page. Like really done. I just have not told him yet. I froze. I did not even realize my hand had tightened around the wrench until it slipped and clanged against the pipe loudly. Silence. Upstairs, then her footsteps. A few cautious steps. Then nothing. I did not move. I did not breathe. I just sat there on the tile floor, soaked in rust water. Heart sinking. My name is Ira. I am 39. I work remote tech support from our attic. Fix things around the house, and apparently I do not excite my wife anymore. Her name is Fallon. We have been married 9 years, no kids, just a cat we both pretend to love more than we actually do. We live in Ohio, in a modest gray house, on a street where every lawn looks like it is trying to win a contest no one agreed to enter. I'd known for a while that Fallon had grown distant. She smiled like she was faking it. She sighed a lot. She scrolled through her phone in bed until the light from the screen bleached her skin cold. But I never imagined she was already emotionally packed up and ready to go after that morning. I did not confront her. I did not ask who Paige was or what else she had shared. I did not even bring up the conversation. What was I going to say? Hey, babe. I overheard you emotionally disengaged from our marriage over speakerphone while I was fixing a pipe. No, I could not even handle my own reaction, let alone hers. I just retreated into myself. I started keeping a little green notebook, not a digital one, an actual notebook. I wrote down the things she said to me that felt off. I wrote down the time she came home late from yoga with perfect hair. I wrote down when her location was off on her phone and then suddenly on again. I wrote it all, not for revenge, not to build a case, just to remind myself I was not losing my mind. She began saying things that sliced me up in subtle ways. Ira, you are too stable. There is no fire, no spontaneity. Or I thought marriage would feel more like a journey. This just feels like standing still. I wanted to scream. Of course we are. Standing still, Fallon? That is what happens when one person is walking away while the other is just trying to hold the door open. But I never said that. I nodded. I smiled. I offered to cook dinner more often. I downloaded a meditation app she liked. I even tried waking up earlier to walk with her before her job. She declined every time. She had already left me. She had just not moved her suitcase yet. Then came the Wednesday night. She walked into the living room while I was folding a sweatshirt and said flatly that she thought she was done. No build-up, no drama, no anger, just that. Like she was saying she was done with the dishes or the laundry. I did not know what she expected. Tears, a speech, a fight. I had all of those things in me boiling, but I gave her none of it. I looked at her. I held her gaze. Then I nodded once. Okay, I said. She tilted her head, confused. That is it. I did not answer. I walked into the bedroom, picked up the small duffel bag I had quietly packed 2 days earlier, took my green notebook, and left the house without slamming the door. Fallon did not follow me. She did not call out. Maybe she thought I was bluffing, but I was not. Because she never saw it coming, I checked into the Sandstone Motel just off Route for 2, the kind of place with scratchy sheets, buzzing lights, and a complimentary breakfast no one actually touches. I did not care. I was not looking for comfort. I was looking for quiet, for space, for the sound of something other than Fallon sighing when I walked into a room. The woman at the front desk did not ask questions. She just slid me the key card, handed me a vending machine voucher, and looked back down at her. Crossword puzzle. I appreciated that. World felt loud, and her silence was a small gift. The first night alone did not feel like freedom. It felt like grief. I lay there in that stiff bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering our first apartment, our camping trip in Minnesota, the time she kissed me with a sparkler in her hand and nearly set my flannel on fire. Remembered how she used to hum to herself when she brushed her hair, and how that humming had stopped years ago. I never asked why. I wondered if she was sitting in our house, thinking about any of that, but I doubted it. By morning, the motel coffee was sludge, and my phone had 11 missed calls, none from Fallon, 1 from my mom, 2 from my coworker Levi, the rest from numbers I did not recognize, no text from her either, no. Where are you? No. Let us talk, just digital silence. I did not go to work that day. I called in and said there was a family emergency. It was not a lie. My marriage had flatlined. That counts, right? Instead, I drove to the little bookstore where Fallon and I used to go on Saturdays before everything got complicated. It was still there, still smelled like dust, cheap coffee. I sat in the same corner we used to sit in. Holding a book, I was not reading. Watching couples walk in and out, holding hands, laughing. I felt like I was watching a world I used to belong to. Now, I was just some guy staring through the glass that night. I opened my green notebook again. I did not just write down what she had said or done. I wrote about me this time, about all the moments I had stayed quiet when I should have spoken up, about the day she canceled our anniversary dinner last minute and I told her it was okay, even though I had spent 3 hours cooking, about the time she laughed too hard at a work friend's text and I pretended not to notice. I started wondering when exactly I became invisible in my own marriage, not just to her, but to myself. The next day, I drove back to our neighborhood. I did not go inside. I parked 2 streets over and just watched from a distance. Her car was there in the same spot, curtains drawn, porch light off. Even though it was already dark, she was not out having some dramatic affair that night. She was just home, in the same place I used to live, breathing air I used to breathe. I do not know what I expected. Maybe to see her pacing the living room, waiting for me to walk through the door. Maybe to see her scrolling through her phone looking miserable, but nothing happened. It was just a quiet house, with my ghost still in it. Then something strange happened. A car pulled into our driveway around 10:47 p.m., not a rideshare. A dark gray sedan headlights stayed on too long. I watched a tall man in a suit get out. He did not knock. He just used the keypad, the one Fallon and I had installed last year. I watched the door open and I watched her let him in without hesitation. Asterisk. I do not know how long I sat there after. That minutes, hours, my hands went cold. My stomach twisted, and yet I was not surprised. The woman who told her friend she was done had not said it on a whim. She meant it, and she had backup waiting. But what she did not know, what she could not possibly guess, was that I had already started unraveling everything behind the scenes. The lease was in my name. The savings account was frozen. The attorney I had been working with was very interested in the little gray notebook. Fallon thought I would disappear quietly, but I was done being silent the next morning. I woke up with one thought repeating in my head like a skipping record. She opened the door for him. Not cautiously, not like a woman hiding a mistake, but like someone greeting a man who had been there many times before. That was what tore at me most. Not the betrayal itself, but how normal it seemed for her. I checked out of the Sandstone that afternoon and drove to the co-working office I had rented the week before. Fallon never knew about it. She always assumed I worked from home. But I had started going there a few days a week once. I noticed how little she cared where I was. I used the time not just to work, but to think, to prepare, inside the office. I spread out everything on the table, printed copies of financial records, screenshots from shared accounts, photos of charges. I had not made a copy of our marriage certificate, even the prenup she had. It's forgotten existed, the one we signed during what she called her realist phase. Back when we were still engaged, asterisk Ira, the pushover, Ira, the quiet one. Ira, who does not yell or make scenes. That was who she thought she married, and that was exactly who I let her believe I still was. But behind my silence, I had been building a wall, one brick at a time. And now she was about to run straight into it. That evening, I texted Fallon for the first time since walking out. "We need to talk, you can pick the place, but it needs to be public." She replied 15 minutes later. "How about Louis Cafe? Tomorrow, 6 p. M. Louis. Our old breakfast spot. Clever choice. Public enough for civility. Familiar enough to feel like a trap." She wanted control. To ease into the conversation with coffee and pancakes like it was not our lives unraveling. When I walked in the next evening, she was already there. Her nails were done. She was wearing the necklace I bought her for our 7th anniversary. She looked at me like I was late for something I did not know I had been invited to. "Ira," she said like it was just any day. "Thanks for meeting me." I nodded and sat across from her, ignoring the fake smile she wore like perfume, so she began stirring her tea. "I did not expect you to leave like that. You said you were done." I replied calmly. "Well, yeah, but I thought you would want to talk through things. Work out logistics." "Like you worked out things with the man in the gray sedan?" I asked. Her spoon froze mid-stir. Her face did not drop. Not right away. Fallon was too composed for that, instead. Her smile faltered just slightly at the corners. "You have been spying on me." "I have been observing. There is a difference." She leaned back and crossed her arms. "Okay, Ira, you want to do this the ugly way?" "No," I said. "I have already done it the smart way." I pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. "What is this? Your exit plan? Signed by both attorneys?" "No." "Alimony. I keep the house, you keep your car, and whatever is in the personal account you opened under your maiden name 2 months ago." Her eyes widened. "You went through my things. You left it open on your laptop." I did not. "Snoop. You just stopped caring whether I saw," she said. "Nothing. You were done." "Fallon, you said it yourself. So I just made sure we did not waste any more time pretending." "I did not mean it like this." She whispered I was not ready. "Yeah, but you were ready for him." That hit her. She looked down, biting the inside of her cheek for a split second. I saw regret in her eyes, not sorrow. Just regret that she had not controlled the narrative. "You think you are the victim here?" she said suddenly, sharpening. "You were always so passive. Like a ghost walking through your own life." I nodded. "You are right. I was passive. But ghosts watch everything. And now, I am haunting the version of me you thought you could leave behind." She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair slightly off balance. "I will have my lawyer call yours." She snapped, grabbing the envelope. "Already has," I said without looking up. 3 days ago, she walked out. Her heels clicked sharply across the tile. Her spine was straight, but her hands were trembling just enough for me to notice as I watched her disappear into the parking lot. Something inside me finally clicked into place. Not triumph, Not vengeance, just clarity. She thought I would vanish quietly like all the other things she had grown tired of, but I left with my head held high, and she never saw it coming. I thought that after our meeting at Louis, things would quiet down, that Fallon would retreat, lick her wounds, and let the dust settle. But that was not what happened. Not with someone like her. The next morning, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, another one, then a text. "This is Calvin. Fallon's brother. Call me. She is not doing well." I stared at the message for a while. Calvin and I had never been close. He was one of those guys who made everything into a joke. The kind of man who would clap you on the back too hard and ask invasive questions with a grin. But the wording, "she's not doing well," that got under my skin. Fallon might have shattered us, but I did not want her unraveling. I called. He answered immediately. "Ira. Hey man, I know this is weird, but she is spiraling. Define spiraling," I said. Trying not to sound cynical, she showed up at our mom's house crying, then locked herself in the bathroom. For 2 hours, she is saying you blindsided her, that she did not know you would leave her. I finished his thought for him. He went quiet, then carefully. He said, "She told us you planned this for months, that you made her look like the villain." "I did not have to," I said, voice low. "She handled that part herself." Another silence. Then he sighed. "Look, man, I do not know what went down between you two, but I do know she did not think you had it in you. Whatever you did, it rattled her." That part made me pause. I had not expected Fallon to care or react. I thought she would use that gray-suited guy as a parachute and land somewhere new without looking back. But apparently, I had shaken her in a way I never could when we were married. Later that day, Fallon called me herself. I did not answer. She left a voicemail. "Ira, I just want to understand. When did you change? When did you start planning all this? Who are you, right?" Now, there it was. Not guilt. Not apology. Not apology. Not ownership, just confusion that I had become something she did not anticipate that I had stopped being. Predictable, I did not respond. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. Not a revenge plot, not a dramatic life. Transformation, just the basics. I moved into a small second-floor apartment above a hardware store. The landlord was a guy named Milt, a widower who mostly kept to himself, but offered me free use of his basement tools if I helped him move things on weekends. I said yes. I needed to keep my hands busy in the evenings. I walked to the diner down the street and read from my green notebook. Then I started writing something new in the back pages. Not notes about Fallon, but about me, about the version of myself I had. Hidden for years, I wrote about how I always waited for permission to speak, about how I mistook being quiet for being kind, how I had apologized for things I never did just to avoid tension. Fallon had not destroyed me, she just exposed how unfinished I really was. One night, as I was locking up the apartment, I saw a familiar car parked across the street. Fallon's. I did not move. I just stood in the doorway, watching her sit there in the dark. She did not get out, did not knock. She just sat, staring at the building like it had stolen something from her. After maybe 10 minutes, she drove away. It happened again 2 nights later, and again the next week. Fallon was not stalking me, at least not in the dangerous sense. She was orbiting, hovering on the edge of what used to be hers, trying to understand how I had left without collapsing. I think it scared her more than any screaming match ever could. A few days later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo. One of the few I knew she kept in her jewelry box. It was of us at Lake Crescent 6 years ago. I was holding a fish too small to brag about. She was laughing, hair soaked from the rain. On the back, in her handwriting, it said, "This was real for a while. I am sorry I let it rot." No signature, just that. I stared at it for a long time, heart stuck somewhere between rage and sorrow. Then I folded it up, slid it between the pages of the green notebook, and put both in the drawer. Fallon wanted to rewrite the ending, but I was not letting her hold the pen anymore. A week after the package arrived, I finally stopped watching the door. For a while, every time a car slowed near my building, I half expected it to be her again. Another late-night visit, another silent stakeout, another reminder of how our marriage ended not with fire, but with frost. But the car did not come back. The texts stopped. Her brother stopped calling. It was like the storm had passed, not with destruction, but with abandonment at first. I told myself it was peace, but deep down, I knew better. Fallon was recalculating. I kept moving forward. I started going to group runs on Saturdays. Even though I hated running, I started helping Milt more with the hardware shop downstairs. Stocking shelves and lifting pallets, the rhythm of it, the effort, the PHYSICALITY it grounded me. I was not just recovering, then something happened that cracked the surface again. One morning, while checking my email, I saw a message from Fallon's work address. The subject line read simply, "Misunderstanding." I hovered over the trash icon, but curiosity won. I opened it. "Ira, I never told you the whole story. The man you saw, he is not what you think. His name is Chandler. He was my therapist. I have been seeing him for months after my father passed, and I did not want you to. No, I thought you would see it as weakness. That is why he had the door code. I let him in so he could check on me after I skipped sessions. There was never anything romantic. I swear to you, I read it 3 times. Then at 4th, I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling for 20 minutes, feeling something that should have been relief, but felt more like betrayal wearing a disguise. If it were true, if this Chandler was just a therapist, then why did she never mention grief? Why did she say she was done? Like I was some worn-out couch she could not return. Why talk about me to her friend? Paige, like I was already a ghost. Why never invite me into that pain? And then it hit me. Even if she had not cheated in the traditional sense, she still removed me from her emotional life long before I ever walked out that door. She let another man have access to the most private parts of her, not her body, maybe, but her soul. That kind of intimacy leaves a scar just as deep. Still, I did something I did not expect, I replied. Then you should have said something when I was still there. I was not afraid of your pain. Fallon, I was afraid of how much you kept from me. I am glad you got help. But I had no idea you even needed it. That was the part that broke me. She never responded, not a word, not a nothing. And for some reason, that silence felt more final than the day she said she was done. Weeks passed, fall came, the leaves along. Route 42 burned gold and crimson, and I started to feel lighter. My green notebook, once a log of quiet pain, became a place for sketches and lists, new goals, new recipes I wanted to try, even names of cities I might like to visit. Then one evening, as I was closing the hardware shop, Milt nodded toward the counter and said, "I had a visitor." I turned, expecting a neighbor, maybe a customer from earlier in the week, but it was not. It was Paige, yes. That Paige, Fallon's friend, the one from the phone call. She looked uncomfortable, like someone showing up to the wrong wedding. She was holding a small brown envelope and a very large cup of coffee. "Ira," she said, "can we talk?" Everything in me screamed no, but I gestured toward the bench outside anyway. She sat. "I sat the night buzzed with crickets and far-off traffic. I did not come to cause trouble," she started, "but Fallon does not know I am here. She would lose her mind if she did." "Good to know," I said flatly. She offered me the envelope. I think you should have this. Fallon wrote it for you a week after you left. She never sent it. I found it by accident. I did not take it at first. I just stared at it in her hand. "Why are you giving this to me now, Paige?" Hesitated, because you deserved more than a shutdown in silence. And because honestly, I do not think she even knows what she wants anymore. But I saw how she treated you, and I was not okay with it. I finally took the envelope and tucked it into my coat. I did not open it then. I just thanked her quietly and watched her walk away into the dark. That night, I stared at that envelope for hours. Not reading it, just holding it, wondering if closure could really come from words that had sat hidden in a drawer like a secret apology. Eventually, I slid it open. What I read inside changed everything I thought I knew about why she let go, what it actually meant when someone says they are done. The envelope contained 6 pages lined, handwritten, some words crossed out, others underlined twice. I did not even realize I was holding my breath until I started reading. Fallon's handwriting looked shakier than usual, messier, not the clean curated notes she used to leave on the fridge or the clipped to-do lists I found in her planner. This was something raw, something closer to what I wish she had said in person. She started with IRA. "If you are reading this, it means Paige betrayed me. But maybe that is not such a bad thing." I kept going. She wrote about how she had started slipping into a fog the year before. "It was not you," she said, "but also somehow always a little bit you." She talked about feeling stuck, like the life she built had started fitting her wrong, like wearing a sweater I loved once. She wrote, "But now it itches and tightens around the neck." She admitted to Tesh and me. She said she wanted me to notice. Something was wrong to me to notice. Something was wrong. To force a confrontation because she did not have the courage to start one herself. And when I did not care, when really I was just waiting for her to let me in. She wrote about Chandler, the therapist, and how she convinced herself he was a safe space because he did not know her history. Her habits, the version of herself she thought, had become boring. "He saw me as a woman in pain," she wrote, "not as a wife who had stopped putting in effort. With you, I felt seen in ways I did not like. With him, I felt invisible in a way that felt peaceful." She said she never slept with him, that she thought about it. But the guilt made her stop before anything happened. "But I know emotional betrayal counts too," she added, "and I will not ask you to forgive that. I just hope someday you will understand how afraid I was to ask for help." It was the final paragraph that cut the deepest. Not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. "You were always steadier than me, kinder than I gave you credit for. I thought you would crumble when I said I was done, but you did not. You left like a man who had been broken already. I did not know you had that kind of strength." I think that is the part that scared me the most. That I never really knew what you were made of until it was too late. I closed the letter. I sat in the silence of my apartment. The only noise came from the occasional creak of the floorboards above me. I did not cry. I did not rage. I just felt hollow. It was strange. I had wanted answers for so long. Wanted to know why she turned cold, why she pushed me out, why she opened the door for someone else while I was still trying to get back inside emotionally. Now I had those answers, and they did not fix anything. Because understanding is not the same as healing. The next day, I took the letter to a nearby lake where Fallon and Sabas spent an anniversary. The dock was empty. The wind was sharp. I sat on a bench and reread every word. Then, for reasons I cannot fully explain, I burned it. I did not do it out of anger. I was not trying to erase her words, but I needed a line in the sand. A moment where I stopped letting her version of the story sit alongside mine. I watched the paper curl and darken, flame-swallowing ink until nothing remained but ash. And in that moment, something shifted in me. Not closure, not peace, but motion. That evening, I got a message from someone unexpected. Levi. My coworker from the tech company. He had heard through the grapevine that I had moved out and asked if I wanted to grab drinks. I almost declined, but something told me to go. At the bar, Levi leaned in after his second beer and said, "Man, I hope you do not take this the wrong way. But I always thought Fallon was kind of intimidating." I laughed, caught off guard. Why? She had this way of looking at people like she was trying to decide whether they were worth her time. You never did that. You just listened. That sat with me. The truth is, I did listen, but for too long. I stopped listening to myself. Later that night, walking home, past a couple sitting on a bench. They were mid-argument, voices low but tense. The woman said, "Just say something, anything." And the man, arms folded, muttered, "I do not know what you want me to say. That was us once. Me." Frozen, Fallon, desperate, and both of us missing the bridge we were supposed to build together, only now, was not that man anymore. I was not stuck in silence. I was not trying to hold together something only one of us was willing to repair. Fallon thought saying she was done would make her free. But what neither of us saw coming was that I would be the one who actually walked away. A month passed, then another. The seasons shifted quietly, like they do when you are not really watching. One morning I noticed frost on the windshield of my car, and it hit me. I had been out of the house for over 3 months, long enough for my body to adjust to the quiet, long enough for my soul to stop waiting for her to call again. Fallon did not reach out anymore. There were no more sightings of her parked near my apartment. No late-night texts, no accidental run-ins at grocery stores or coffee shops we used to visit. She had disappeared as efficiently as I had, and honestly, that was when it started to feel real. Not just a break, not just a messy chapter, but the end of a story. We had both outgrown, but the strangest part of grief is not the heartbreak. It is the identity crisis that follows. For so long, I had been a husband. That role had defined my routines, my thoughts, even my personality. I made compromises not just for love, but for comfort. I stopped going on hikes because Fallon hated bugs. I let go of old friends she found draining. I even changed how I laughed. I realized that one night because she once said my laugh made me sound too eager. When you let someone shape you for too long, you forget the contours of your own original form. So I started to rebuild, not as an act of revenge or reinvention, but as an act of recovery. I went back to things that used to bring me joy, things I had not touched in years. I found my old sketch pad from college shoved in a box of cords and tools. I bought new pencils. I started drawing in the early mornings, before the sun came up while the city still felt half asleep. I called up a friend I had not spoken to in years, Dana, a woman I used to work with back when Fallon and I were just dating. We had always clicked. But Fallon did not like the way Danica smiled too much when she talked to me, so I stopped replying to texts. I stopped inviting her to things. I erased the friendship to preserve the peace at home now. I was sitting across from her at a diner, trying to explain all the years that had passed in a single breath. To her credit, she did not judge me. She just smiled and said, "Sounds like you were trying to disappear politely." That line stuck with me for days, because she was right. For years, I was not just quiet. I was vanishing, shrinking myself to fit a shape Fallon would not criticize, toning myself down to avoid conflict. I thought I was being a good husband. Turns out, I was just being a fading one. Around that time, I had a dream in it. I was back in our old house. Fallon was upstairs laughing with someone I could not see. I was trying to pack a suitcase with hands that would not work right. Everything kept falling out. Socks, shirts, memories. When I finally zipped it shut, I turned around to leave. But the door had vanished. Just wall, just more beige drywall. I woke up in a sweat, sitting up in bed, heart racing. That dream haunted me for days, not because it was scary, but because it felt like a metaphor I could not ignore. Even after walking away, I was still carrying the residue of a life that did not fit, still trying to close a suitcase full of things I should have thrown out years ago. I knew what I had to do next. I called the lawyer and asked him to begin formal proceedings for the final property settlement. The house was still in my name, and while I could have forced a sale or taken it back, I told him to give Fallon the option to buy me out if she wanted it. If that house meant anything to her beyond convenience, she could keep it, but I was not stepping foot in it again. Then, For the first time, I started looking at new cities. Not vacations. Moves. I pulled out a map, circled 3 towns I had always been curious about, and scheduled road trips for the next month. I did not know where I was going to land. I just knew I could not stay anchored in a place haunted by almost and could have beens. Before I left, did one more thing. I wrote Fallon a letter. Not out of sentimentality, not for closure, just as a final chapter. It was short, honest, kind. Fallon, we were real. I know that. And maybe you do too. But we stopped seeing each other long before we said goodbye. I wish you peace, I really do. And hope someday we both become people we would have actually loved, Ida. I did not mail it. I folded it, slid it into the back of the green notebook, and packed it in my duffel. The next morning I loaded the car, turned the key, and drove away from the city that held our story. I did not cry. I did not look back. Because for the first time in years, I was not walking away from something broken. I was walking towards something whole. The first town I visited was called Milmer, a quiet place tucked between 2 rivers and surrounded by hills that blazed gold and crimson in autumn. It did not have much. A used bookstore, a couple of diners in Main Street with crooked sidewalks, and hand-painted signs. But it had air, stillness, space. To breathe, I rented a small cabin. On the edge of town for 2 weeks, no TV, spotty. Internet, just trees, wind, and my own thoughts. In that stillness, something inside me finally settled. I stopped checking my phone for missed calls that never came. I stopped replaying old arguments in my head, like broken records. I woke up with the sun and drank coffee. Without the weight of unfinished conversations, I started sketching. Again, not from memory, but from life. Trees, faces, little moments I used to ignore. One afternoon, I sat at a cafe sketching the view from the window when the waitress paused beside me. Her name was Lainey, you know. Most people just scroll their phones while they wait, she said. I smiled. Most people do not know what they are missing. She tilted her head. I like that. You passing through? Maybe. I said, maybe not. Over the next few days, we talked more. Nothing dramatic, just real conversations. She asked thoughtful questions, listened, did not press. It was not romantic. And that was what made it feel safe, like 2 people just existing without expectation. On my last morning in Milmer, she handed me a note along with my coffee. If you ever decide to stop passing through, come back and stay a while. I folded it, smiled, and told her, maybe I will. From there, I drove west, visited 2 more towns. Each one had its own rhythm, its own voice, but none felt quite like Milmer. By the time I returned to my apartment weeks later, the lease felt too big and too quiet. I packed my things and made the move official. Milt shook my hand and told me I looked 10 years younger. I had not noticed it. But maybe I was starting to believe it too, back in Milmer. I found a small rental near the edge of town and picked up part-time work at the bookstore. I sketched in the mornings, stacked shelves in the afternoons, wrote in my notebook at night. Not the old green one, a new one, clean and untouched, with a soft leather cover and thick, welcoming pages. One evening, walking through the trees just before sunset, I stopped and realized something strange. I was happy. Not fireworks happy, not movie ending happy, but quiet. Steady, genuine peace. The kind that hums through your bones and makes you grateful. For every small thing, a warm drink, a shared smile, a room that feels like yours. Fallon never reached out. Again, I never looked her up. Some endings are better left closed, but in a way, I owe her, because her saying she was done became the start of my beginning. She thought I would shatter, but I rebuilt slowly, quietly, brick by brick, version by version, And now, every time I hear the phrase starting over, I do not think of it as failure. I think of it as freedom, because I did not just walk away from her. I walked back to myself, and that finally is where my story truly begins.
Thank you for watching. What do you think? Was he right to walk away without looking back? Or should some doors never be closed completely? Have you ever reached a point where silence said more than words ever could? Let me know in the comments. I read every one of them. If this story made you feel something, I would truly appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed to the channel. More real stories are on the way, and I would be glad to have you here for the next one.